I've been thinking about potential a lot recently. All the things that we say we could do, the things that other people believe we are capable of doing, and the person that we actually become. Those things are not always the same. There are people who have enormous potential and yet never become successful. And then there are people who are not considered as having potential at all, and they end up doing extraordinary things. So, what is potential actually worth? This is a topic that I have for many years explored and thought about and have always been fascinated with potential. Our capabilities, what we think about ourselves, and what other people think about us, and how that translates into the person that we eventually become. Potential versus becoming. How do the two meet? How do they diverge? What is it that makes someone with potential become very successful and someone who doesn't seem to have it at all also become extraordinarily very successful? Recently, I was talking to my son and he plays an instrument. So he was telling me a story about auditioning. And he said, Mom, there was a song that we were asked to audition for if we wanted to play it solo, but I wasn't interested, so I didn't practice for it. However, when I got to practice, my teacher asked me to audition for a song that I hadn't practiced, but she wanted me to audition anyway. And so I did. And when I did, I was able to play some of the really high notes that are difficult. But that conversation brought the topic of potential back to me again, because then we had a conversation about potential. And I told him that your teacher sees potential in you. That's why she asked you to audition for something that you hadn't practiced. But then, as we talked about the idea of potential, it just brought back this topic to me, which I have explored for years, how we become who we become. And I think to start, it would be wise to actually think about the word potential. And I think potential just means what could be. It just gives us a glimpse of what could be, but it's not in any way a predictor of what would be. And I think that is a clear distinction of someone having potential and who the person becomes. There are different ways that we notice potential. Sometimes we notice potential in ourselves. And other times, the people around us, like this teacher, would notice potential in you. And sometimes potential is noticed by the people that you grow up with, your family, your parents. They would notice potential in you. But having said all of that, potential is just a predictor of who you could become. It doesn't prescribe who you would become. And so for me, for example, growing up, I was creative, always have been, knew that I was creative, loved being creative. However, my parents, they didn't notice. For some reason, they didn't notice that I was creative and passionate about creating. And just recently, in the past year or so, both parents, my mom and my dad, have asked me this question: how come we missed seeing your potential in creativity? How can we miss seeing how creative you are? My dad asked me that question first, and then a few months later, when I was chatting with my mom, she asked me the same question. How did we miss how creative you are, how talented you are? You know, however, the interesting thing is that my peers, people I went to middle school and high school with, noticed that I am creative and I have the potential to be creative. And recently, after I have started creating work and putting work out in the world, I have heard from some of my schoolmates who said, we always knew. We always knew. And I find it so fascinating that when it comes to potential, sometimes certain groups of people around you would see, and certain groups of people around you would not notice. But what is it, though, that makes someone move from the possibility of becoming to the reality of actually becoming? And when I look in my own life, I think that one of the things is to, one, number one, number one is to actually believe in yourself. Because I don't think that anybody can make you be who you do not want to become. And so, in the journey of becoming, you have to start with believing in yourself. Maybe somebody can help you believe in yourself, but you need to believe in yourself first. It has to start from a place of belief that I can do this thing. I love this thing. I want this thing. I'm passionate about this thing. I want to know more. And so, number two, I think, is curiosity. You want to be somebody who is curious about what will happen if I did this. And for me, I think that curiosity is one of the things that led me to this path. And I always say that there are two questions that started my work with thread and fabrics. And the first question for me was, how can I use a sewing machine to create art? That was my first question. That was my first source of curiosity. I wanted to know if a sewing machine, my sewing machine sitting over there, if I could use it to create art. I was just curious. And so for me, that started the questioning, the experimentation, the exploration, the discovery. And then the next thing for me was, if I can draw with a line, if I can create art with a line, what can I do with a stitch? How can I use a stitch line to create art? So those were the two questions for me. So I think that one, you need to believe in yourself, and two, you have to be curious about what it might look like, because potential, like you said, is just something that could be, but you have to be curious about how would it look if it actually happened, right? So if you're not curious to want to find out how that potential would translate into you becoming a person that has exercised their potential, then you will never go on that path. But if you have that curiosity in you, wanting to find out, how will this thing look like? How would it manifest if I went down this path? And I think just having that curiosity is enough to start you on the path. Another thing that for my own practice turned out to be helpful is that I took on a challenge and disciplined myself. I like this saying that talent is overrated. You can be talented in something, you can have potential in something, people can see it or not see it, you can see it yourself, but that is just a seed. That is a seed that needs to be planted, watered, the soil turned. You have to do something with it for it to grow and become a plant. And so, for potential to be realized, something needs to happen. Something has to happen in that space between potential and realize. And excuse me. Something needs to happen between the space between potential and the realization of the potential. And that is the planting the seed, watering the seed, turning the soil, and giving it time. After all of that, you give it time. Because even after you have planted, watered, you need to sit and wait and watch it grow. You cannot um, you cannot fast forward the time. So number three is discipline. Disciplining yourself to invest in the potential that you have. And for me, what I did in the beginning was that I took on a 52-week challenge. And I said to myself, I am going to do this thing for 52 weeks. I am going to use my sewing machine to draw a sketch. I want to use my sewing machine the same way I would use a pen and paper to sketch. And so I did that for 52 weeks. And every week I will show up. Every week, I will show up to my sewing machine and sketch something. It doesn't matter how simple, how just sketch something, do it. And the goal was not to create something amazing. The goal was not to create a masterpiece. The goal was just to do it, just to exercise the muscle. And after 52 weeks, I developed this love for stitching, this love for creating with just stitch. And not only the love for doing it, but I developed skill. I became skillful at doing this thing. I know how to thread my sewing machine fast because I would have to change the thread often. I know how to change the bobbin fast. I know how to recover from breaking a needle. I started to build skills. And so we have talent on one side or potential on one side, and then we have skill. And to get from the talent or the potential to the skill, you have to discipline yourself and actually do something, actually work at it. And I hinted on number four just a moment ago. Number four for me, I think, is time. You need time to invest in that's discipline. You need time to be able to sit there and say, every week I'm creating something little. It takes time to do it. But I think of time when I think about a creative endeavor in two different ways, two distinct ways. So you need time to actually do the project, but you also need time for your skills to grow. So you need time to see progress. You need time to experience growth. So it's not just the time that you invest momentarily into making the project, but it is time over a period. And so without both of those types of time, you will not see the growth that could happen when you invest in your potential. When I think about potential, another thing that comes to mind is that potential can be on the flip side, a source of judgment. It could be judgment, it could be you judging yourself, or it could be other people judging you. Because when you think about it, in the beginning, I said people can spot potential in you, and you can also spot potential in yourself. So it could be used as a form of judgment where you are the people who notice potential, um, judge you for not becoming who you were supposed to become. However, I think that potential is just a door, and there are many doors to becoming. And so, if we fixate on our imagination of what we think potential should become, it can become a source of judgment for ourselves or for the other people in our lives who are looking at us and saying, you did not become who you could have become. Because potential, when it's being realized, has no real formula. No one knows exactly how it will become realized. So you might have a potential to be, let's say, a footballer, right? And you would play really good football and be satisfied and fulfilled in your life. And you would have realized your potential. And on the other hand, you would probably have the potential for playing football and never actually become a footballer, but you would become a great football coach because of your love and your potential in football. So the way that it manifests itself, the way that it will eventually realize itself, is not something that we can predict. And so I say that to say that do not allow potential or the thought of potential to become a source of judgment for you in your life because you did not become the thing that potential or your potential told you or indicated that you would become. Potential is a possibility. And what we become, what a person becomes, is when that possibility is met with choice, circumstances, relationships, action, discipline, all of that mixed into the potential. It's what gives us the result of who the person becomes. Like I said, potential is a door, and the journey to becoming is going through that door. And we end up realizing that there are more doors than one when we actually start on that journey. We realize that what we thought in the beginning, that was just one door, there are more doors. For me as a creative person on this journey, I could be a full-time artist like I am right now. I could teach, I could be a teaching artist, I could make products, I could work with an organization. I could do so many things. So it is a journey, and there are multiple doors in that journey. And who you become at the end of it all is based on so many factors, so many circumstances, so many different things. So potential could lead you on different paths. I talk about my path as an artist, and even within that, I could have gone totally different ways. And then when I think back to my parents asking, how come we did not notice your potential? I think that the answer to that is because their minds were fixed on a different potential that they saw in me. So they saw me as someone who was intellectually curious, was smart, still is smart, if I say was, is smart, loved the sciences. And so that is what they encouraged. They encouraged me to go the science path. And that is what they could see, and that is what they encouraged. And so potential could take you on different paths. I could have gone on the science path and I would have done okay there as well. But this is where I ended up. And so I say all of that to say there are different doors for your potential, and your potential can take you in different directions. Tell me in the comments, how has potential worked in your own life? Did you become the person that you thought your potential will lead you to become, or the person that your family thought you would become because of your potential, or your teachers, mentors? How did it play out in your own life? Do you have shame around not becoming who you were quote unquote supposed to become? What do you think about potential, talent, skill, becoming, the journey, all of that? What do you think? I really want to hear what you think. So leave your comments down below and let's chat about it. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Until next time, create something meaningful and share it with the world. I'll see you next time.